Estongo and hello. I'm so happy that you're here with us for our first show of Unequal Temperament. My name is Tim Long, and you just heard the great Martha Redbone and her song Medicine Man. I've fallen in love with Martha Redbone in the last year, and I hope you all will check her out too. She's on Spotify and everywhere, and she's also a Choctaw cousin, not a real cousin, a Choctaw cousin in Brooklyn. Um, I'm thrilled that you guys are joining us instead of the presidential debate. And I really hope I don't have to mute my guest because she's quite verbose, but I'll try not to do that too much. Um, like many of us, I'm a big mixture of qualities and really a walking contradiction. I grew up in southeastern Oklahoma in a town called Holdenville, which is in the southern part of the Creek Nation. But I've lived in New York State for over 30 years now, thus my unique accent. We were just discussing accents, and I love accents. So, just to get to know each other a little bit, I'd like to tell you about certain ways that I self identify. I am a husband. I am ruled by a 10-year-old Basset Hound mix named Pumpkin. I'm an insomniac. 3 hours of sleep last night. That's not unusual. I'm a junior Trekkie, and I say that because I'm not a senior Trekkie. I don't know everything, but I love Star Trek, and I've watched it almost daily since 1974. Um, I love Cheetos, both the blue and the red kind. I grew up with very strong synesthesia and very intense sleepwalking. I am gay occasionally, and I'm a classical pianist and a conductor. And I'm a Native American from the Muskogee Creek tribe and the Choctaw tribe. And I'm also a member of the Thapako tribal town. And as my father taught me, I'm supposed to always say that I'm the son of all Wutkos. And a Wutko in Creek is a raccoon, and that was my father's clan. So I'm instructed to look up to all Wutkos in my life. Um, People tend to think I'm either the nicest person on earth or the biggest asshole they've met. And I'm pretty sure both of those are true. And, I accept it. It's a fun life. Here's the deal. I am not an expert on really much of anything, but I've always been a very curious person. And I love to learn and share my own experiences. And I love talking to people. And I think I inherited that from my father. After moving from Oklahoma, this is 30 years ago. I was 22. I began to notice something, and that is that I'm almost always the one and only Native American that my friends and colleagues know. In that respect, I am an anomaly in classical music, and that I'm an anomaly in my tribe too. But as I grow older, my indigenous connections become more and more important to me. I miss Oklahoma. I miss all the elders who have passed on because they enabled me to have this fortunate life that I have. So much has affected us in 2020, and it has opened up the need for many conversations that have been taboo for so many people. I'm not here to necessarily find solutions, but to say that yes, we can have difficult conversations and remain friends and remain calm, really, and listen. We can help each other move forward through conversations that enlighten us and help us to clarify our own thoughts. Here are a few things to remember that I like to remind myself and remind you. We are all imperfect. We've all made mistakes. We've all offended people. We've all used bias in our decisions, in our friendships, and in our humor. But like it or not, we are an evolving species. So much of our lives are reflected by how comfortable we are in being part of that evolution slash revolution. You can't stop it. One of my lifelong conversation traits is that I tend to take conversations to unusual places. For me, it seems normal. It always has. For others, it's sometimes shocking, or so I've been told, but it's always interesting and fun. Um, Before I go any further, I would like to invite our viewers to send in audience questions. We're going to have a section later where we actually answer audience questions for both Marie and for myself. And you can see that it's going to be scrolling by in a second, the email address where you can do this. And if you just want to say hi, you can do that too and tell us you're out there. So Mado for being here, and I hope you enjoy the show with us. My first guest is one of my favorite people in the galaxy, and her name is Marie Clements, and she is a Dene Métis. Well, I don't know if I can get all this right. Playwright, filmmaker, actor, director, producer, lyricist, librettist, and she lives on Galiano Island, British Columbia. She has worked as a radio announcer and is still a contributor to CBC Radio and has written at least 15 plays. Her bio is always changing because she is truly prolific, so I don't know how accurate I am with this. Some of her plays include Urban Tattoo, The Unnatural and Accidental Woman, The Edward Curtis Project, Tombs of the Vanishing Indian, The Road Forward, which I love, Red Snow, which is a current project. She's a playwright in residence at the National Theatre School of Canada, the Banff Centre for the Arts, and the National Arts Centre. She has her own film company, her own production company, and has won far too many awards to mention in one podcast. So I hope you will join me in welcoming Marie Clements. Welcome, Marie.
Hi there, Tim.
How
Hi.
are you? Before we go any further, there's something that I witnessed in Canada that we were not doing here in the United States, and it's just starting to happen. So I would like to do a land acknowledgement. I am in Rochester, New York, which is the original territory of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and I would like to thank them for allowing us to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for getting all the energy there. And just wanted to also lift my hands up to the Penkalit Nation here and also the unceded territory of the Coast Salish territories. So, Masi.
Thank you so much. And so, Rochester, I'm glad to be here because we've been doing pretty well with COVID, although it's rampant all over the United States. I'm wondering how things are on Galiano Island for you.
Well, here things are pretty beautiful in the sense that, it's a fairly isolated little island. So that continues to be so even during this COVID pandemic. I think in BC, on the west coast of, Canada, we're going through a bit of a second wave. So people are trying to adapt, but, everyone's moving forward in the best way they can and trying to be safe and respectful, but also, I don't know. It's definitely a different time, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, it's crazy. And it sort of
Yeah.
makes us appreciate everything that we had before, truly. And, I miss our whole missing group, and I know some of them are watching tonight, but I can't wait until I can come back to Canada, go to do other projects. But really, your work is so close to my heart. So I can't wait for that to happen again. But I'm curious to know a little bit more about you. I mean, we've known each other for 3 years, although for me, I feel like I've known you for a lifetime or several lifetimes. It's really kind of scary. Um, uh,
Well, you're
so,
scary, right?
well, I'm scary. A lot of people think I'm scary. That's true. My father-in-law who thinks I'm scary, and I'm at his house right now. That's why he served me a nice steak before. Um,
So
I
cute.
think
Sorry.
I
Yeah.
don't think you've ever found me scary though, or have you?
No, no, but I just had to say that because you let me. So there you go. There was a little door and it happened. So
I
there you
think we're kind of similar somehow. I don't know what that is. It's
go.
hard to describe, but the last time, well, I saw you in New York, it was a great experience because we started out at the Algonquin, like really fancy people, and just like a couple of indigenous people, we ended up at a dive bar in Times Square, and it
It
was a
all makes sense, right? It all makes sense. And now, those memories seem so heightened and great
oh
because,
my gosh,
oh, wow, wouldn't it be just great to be sitting across the table talking, right? And
wouldn't it?
yeah, I know. But I'm
That,
happy I'm here talking with you now. So
Well, I'm thrilled to be here with you because it does feel a little bit like we're in a bar talking, just with people watching us. That's all.
awkward,
Um,
awkward, but oh well.
yeah, I don't know. It's fun to be watched sometimes, isn't it? Um, Anywho, so I'm just very curious because I don't know every aspect of your history, and I'd read a little bit about how you started writing, and were you trying to sort out something? How did you begin writing and acting?
Well, I
Or
think like a lot of us, tortured early artists. I wrote a lot of bad poetry as a kid, and I think also that part of it was what I was trying to sort out was just trying to get a role. Indigenous woman's role that didn't suck, that had the complexities of the women I know, and that the role could offer something challenging as an actor. So I really was motivated by just really wanting to be an incredible actress and have roles that challenged me, and also had roles that represented women and Indigenous women, that had power and complexity and that were interesting. And so that was a great motivator to write, which, I think that sometimes happens, right?
Well, I'm very curious because I'm in music, which is a very different thing. Opera is a very different thing, as you know. But as an actress, being an Indigenous person, were there roles being offered to you, or were they trying to pigeonhole you in certain roles?
Well, I think I did. When I think back, I feel kind of grateful. I mean, I really did have a reasonably great career as a young actor. I was touring with a lot of shows and worked with a lot of great directors that I still know and respect. But I mean, part of it too is that you find yourself, as you get into it, years kind of roll in, and then you're looking at roles that you go, oh, wait a minute, I played almost the same role 10 years ago. And so, you're wanting to continue to challenge yourself, and yet you're stuck in one role. And as women change, anyways, regardless of age, you start getting into other roles. And so, you're not the rebel without a cause anymore, which can kind of be fun playing. But now you're like, you're not the medicine woman. So all you got is this whole this whole lot of years where nobody knows what to do with women, never mind Indigenous women. So I really found that there was something that I needed to do, or to voice, and I also wanted to see women that I knew on stage, and I wanted to see them have a voice, because I think they're forever interesting, and sometimes we don't get to see that, even though we know it, we don't get to see it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I've always been in music my whole life. I'm a horrible actor. I've acted about 3 times in my life, and I think it was the first time I had a small part. I was playing piano, and then I had to go on stage, and there was a review that called me downright creepy, which I love, actually.
I
Isn't that
love
a great one? That should go at the top of my website, really. But your careers take you to so many incredible places. And one question I want to ask you, maybe you could tell our viewers this: um, how did you end up at the Vatican?
How did I end up at the Vatican? Was I there?
Wasn't there something with the Vatican in one of your movies?
Oh, it's funny. No, because I was just talking about that today. But I'm working on a mini series called Bones of Crows, and the character does end up at the Vatican. So I can't tell you much more than that. But yes, we are going there.
Is this what type of piece is this?
It's a right now 4 to 5 part psychological drama that looks at what is it? It looks at residential school, which is pretty similar, different wording, but it's the boarding schools, Indian boarding schools
Yep.
in the Americas. And it really looks at our history, but also the history of government and state and how they put that together, and the ramifications of 150 years of having, thousands of children be taken away from their families.
Yeah.
Um, what effect that has on our lives.
It's just horrible that, Canada is so far ahead of the United States when it comes to admitting the wrongs of the past with Indigenous people. My mom grew up in an Indian boarding school in southeastern Oklahoma, and it was terrible. That's where she began to lose her language because she grew up with Choctaw and they didn't allow it there. And then various other things happened. And God, I don't know if you saw this in the news, but this just came out the other day. And it was horrifying. This ILIF Theological Seminary in Denver, Colorado. Did you hear about that?
I don't think it did. No.
It's terrible. It's from the 19th century. They had for decades on display in a glass case a book of Christian history that, for the cover, had the tanned hide of a Lenape Indian.
Mm.
It was on display for decades, and it has just come out. One of their alums, who is a lawyer, wanted to be brought out because she declared that the past presidents were trying to cover this up because they didn't want to lose money.
Right.
And this is a Methodist theological seminary. And I already had, I grew up Methodist, actually. My grandfather was a Methodist minister, and much of my family in Oklahoma is still Methodist. Um, I love reading about Christianity, but I've had so many problems with it. Well, partially for being gay, and also because of being indigenous and reading what they did to us. And when I hear about a Christian book of history with a cover like that, it's just horrifying and pushes me away even more. Um, but I hope we can get to the place where you all are, and I know you all are still want to go much further with this, but I'm curious because there are a lot of similarities between us and America and Canada, but we do not have a tribe like the Métis. Can you tell us about being Métis in Canada?
Yeah, sure. I mean, part of what I've always found, and maybe I'm incorrect, but I'll just put it out there, is that some of the history that I've researched for different projects, and regarding North America and the Canada-U.S. relation uh, with Indigenous peoples, was that I always felt that Canada was really their method of domination was assimilation at any cost. And a lot of times when I was reading histories in the US, it was annihilation. So I think those two words are very different. And I think they just chose different ways of implementing laws and power in that arena. So I don't know if that adds to the conversation, but I do think there's a difference in how our governments dealt with Indian
Well, that was a great story, Marie. And that's the end of our podcast. Good night. I'm just kidding. It was apparently Kristen Welker and Putin trying to silence our microphones. So thank you for standing by. Um, we were here talking about Métis and how they function in Canada, basically, because we have a lot of mixed blood tribes here, but we don't have specific tribes for that. So we were talking about the Métis tribe, and can you just go back through a little bit of that for us?
Yeah, I think it was at the just talking about what we term as Indigenous peoples in Canada. The umbrella really is First Nations and Inuit and Métis nations, and so that makes up what we consider Indigenous peoples of Canada. So the Métis Nation really came from the contact between traders, fur traders, and Indigenous nations in their regions. And basically, these two peoples had contact and they intermixed and became, as we sometimes call, which I just learned this today, multi ancestral.
Hmm.
So basically, became a distinct society based on the the reality of contact.
And it seems like it really created a new culture. And you mentioned something the other day, uh, the Dene jig.
Well, I don't think the Dene would say they jig, but definitely the Métis jig, and probably a lot of the Métis Dene jig. So there's a whole there's whole music and dances that represent that kind of. There was the jig, obviously, whether it be Irish or Scottish, and then it was matched to probably the Dene Nation. And so some of those old standards that might have been Scottish or Irish became Irish, or no, I'll just say it became Dene Irish, you know? So they had the influences of both cultures, but I think they embrace them, and there are a lot of people that do jig. There are a lot of people that play violin. A lot of Indigenous people that meld both those cultures into kind of this hybrid that is pretty cool, actually, and very, I think, just very interesting because it's a fusion and that's just the way it is.
Do you jig?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I was just dancing to Medicine Man today with my dog, so that's the extent of my jigging. But uh, I don't know, it was a lot of fun. I love what you said earlier, though, about assimilation versus annihilation, because here, truly, one of our presidents, Andrew Jackson, wanted to annihilate us and just completely end us entirely. And it's wonderful that we get to see him on the $20 bill every time we use it. I'm being sarcastic, of course, but there are so many things that are being dealt with so late here. I mean, if you think about the fact that in 2020 we had a team called the Redskins in our nation's capital, and I often say to people, how would you feel about the Buffalo Blackskins, the Chattanooga Chinese, the New Jersey Jews? People are horrified when I say that, but we are so desensitized to Native issues that nobody bats an eye with the Redskins. And mascots are still a big issue here, and I hope we make a lot more progress with all of that. I have a few more questions for you. They're sort of a little bit mixed together right now in my mind because here's a weird thing, and I just kind of clarified for this myself in the last year. When I was growing up, there were no indigenous people on TV apart from westerns and the Lone Ranger. And I always say the one positive role model I had was watching the Super Friends on Saturday morning. And occasionally there would be a guest superhero named Apache Chief. And he would come out in a loincloth and utter some fake Apache words, and he would become a giant. So when I was a child, um, I knew that I was Creek, and I knew that I was Choctaw, and I was around Creek people all the time who spoke Creek. I didn't know I was Indian because Indian seemed to be sort of a white, made up moniker for all of us. So I knew I was Creek, I knew I was Choctaw, But the first time my sister and I went to a powwow as little kids, we started crying because we thought the Indians were going to get us. And it's just so sad that we were kind of taught that in media. I wonder, do you remember a point where you were really conscious of being indigenous?
I think it really came down. I think it really came down to the color of skin.
Yeah.
I think that was where the schoolyard is always like a bit of the one of the most brutal battlefields that we
Horrible.
unfortunately are a part of. I think any human being who's ever been to school have, have been in the playground understands that some of the most terrorist things happen.
Awful. I don't understand people who say those were the best years of their lives.
I
But for
don't
me,
go. I survived and I was really happy. And the best thing is we don't always know any better. It just is what it is.
right.
But I do think I think there's moments where we recognize something hits us, and you were talking about role models, and I mean to be honest, as an artist, what I connected to, because I didn't have it on TV, or I didn't have it that I could find, to be honest, was I really connected to a lot of Black writers, obviously Eartha Kitt, when she was the superhero there. I kind of followed her after that. And I think I was telling you that, one of my biggest, not biggest moments, but it was kind of one of those funny moments you remember when you're older is following Chief Dan George in
Yeah.
Wilco when I was 6, and kind of going, I'd seen him in Little Big Man, and I was like, oh my God, it's a superhero movie star that's indigenous. But I was way too shy to go up to him. But I just followed him through the pharmacy and through the, detergents in in this department store. So I think that was kind of a moment that I really wanted to reach out, and I recognized somebody that I just recognized somebody. And I think I always remember that moment because I was so scared to go up to him, but I was so fascinated by his every move.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, were you a shy girl?
Yeah, I was really quiet and really shy. As the same way I am
Yeah.
now, right, Tim?
I believe it or not, I was similar. I mean, I was shy except blunt. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't talk, and then I would come out with something extremely blunt that would shock people. And I have to say that hasn't changed a whole lot at this point. Um, but a really quick question, and I know these questions can get, I don't know, boring sometimes, but I'm very curious because, I have my own process as a conductor, as a pianist, and looking at scores. I have a very specific way about how I begin them. I have a whole system that allows me to really thoroughly learn about the score. And of course, I got these from other people. I didn't create them myself. But do you have a technique for writing? Like, do you start with structure? I have this quote of yours, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I'm attracted to storytellers who are able to tell a story in a different way, in a structure that unsettles you. So I'm wondering, do you begin with structure, or where do you begin?
I don't necessarily think I do. I mean, I think because I never went formally to university, or I didn't really study writing or even theater or even film in any formal way. I did find mentors that I latched onto and people that I admired. I trained with both as an actor and as a writer. But I think mostly it's I think there's great freedom in that. There's a discipline that you learn about your own practice that comes from how you see the world and how you hear the world. So I think sometimes that's a little bit different if you had gone to university or gone to a more structured where there's, yes, I do know the 3-act play. Yes, I do know, I read, I consume everything that I can on structure, on story, because I'm forever interested and intrigued by it. What works, what doesn't, what can work for me, what was successful, all those things, just hungry for story at all times. But I think mostly what happens is just that I'm intrigued, I'm curious about what it is, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then in that curiosity, it begins to take shape, and that shape becomes a structure, and that structure becomes how the story um, can be told, right? So every story has I kind of go like every story has different bones, it's not the same animal.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to
Well,
understand what that animal is before you can really live in it. So that's kind of just where it's gotten to at this point.
well, I've said I love this combo of you, and because you are somewhat quiet, and the way I describe you, and this is gonna be very flattering, by the way. Um, I say, when you sit down with Marie, she's just a normal person, because you are soft-spoken, and like a lot of Indigenous people, you don't talk about yourself a whole lot. Um, and I say, and little do you know that underneath that is a genius. And I truly feel that way about you. I look at the road forward and I'm just amazed. I was watching that the other night and I was weeping. What was it talking about? If you believe in something, take it. It was just repeating over and over and over. And it was so empowering to hear that. But, you and I met when I conducted the world premiere of Missing. And you wrote the libretto of this, and the wonderful Brian Current wrote the music to it. And I just have to say, that was life changing for me.
Oh,
Um, Truly, and I compare it to a Jewish birthright when people go over to Israel for a summer and they're in their culture every day, all day for an entire summer. Missing did that for me, and I get emotionally just talking about it right now, honestly, and just meeting all of the nations, and they were there. Here's one thing that we have in common: we don't show a whole lot. But there would be so many like older women in the audience, and I would just walk up to them with a completely straight face and say the dumbest thing, and we would all just erupt in laughter, and then suddenly we were all one group. And just seeing all of the blessings at the beginning of the opera, to see the women's warrior song at the end of every one of the shows, to have the smudging at the end. I couldn't believe how lucky I was to be a part of that, to finally be able to combine my two worlds into one very, very powerful project. So thank you for that.
oh.
Um,
All I should say is since we're being nice to each other, which is a nice trait.
that's
Um,
a first.
that's a first. Is that like when I looked over, and I think anybody that was in Missing creatively, when we looked over and saw North American First Nations and Indigenous man conducting the music, it's a profound thing. It's such a sense of pride, and also an idea that we're in good hands and good heart, and that then we can soar, like we don't have to hold on
Mm,
tightly uh,
yeah.
in fear. So I think there's something to it too, that when we see each other, when we see each other in positions of esteem, art esteem, craft, abilities, it's so profound. It is changing. It can change us.
It
And
truly is profound.
yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. And in America, I'm so proud to have Joy Harjo as our poet laureate, and she's from my tribe. I'm so thrilled to have people like Sterling Harjo, who's also from my tribe, who's a very successful filmmaker. And every time I see a Native person having great success, I just want to stand up and applaud. And I don't know, it's amazing because I didn't see that growing up myself. But I'm wondering, Rome, can you play this clip from Missing for us? And it's probably about 3 minutes long, and there are some credits at the end. That does not mean we're over. We're going to watch the clip, and then we'll be right back after that.
hear her voice, to understand she's in this world now. I saw your eyes in me. Did I tell
I've said I don't even know where to begin with this. It makes me so happy to see that, and it pains me beyond belief to see that because I go right back to the emotion that I feel. As a conductor, you have to execute a lot of things. You have to keep a lot of things together. But we had a lot of shows, and I got to witness the story, and it's remarkable. And I have to say also that that group of singers were remarkable people. Yes, I'm talking to you people if you're listening to this. And we would spend all day rehearsing together. Then we would all have dinner together. Then Marion Newman would make her Empress Gin gimlets for us, and we had the best time. And it was extra special to be doing a piece like this with such wonderful people. But this is a topic that is just now getting to the United States, and it is about the over 3,000 missing Indigenous women in Canada, and the fact that nobody was doing anything about that. And how did you come to this? You're from Vancouver, yes?
Yeah, I was raised in Vancouver, and this has been it's always strange to say an issue. I think it because it just doesn't concern Indigenous people or Indigenous women. It concerns all of us, and I think it's a human it's a human problem that we're dealing with. Is that a lot of our beautiful women and young women are being disappeared, and missing is a nice name, isn't it? To say, oh, they're just missing.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
They're
It's
being taken and they're being murdered.
murdered.
Yeah. So we've been, there's a lot of activists in Canada that have been, working with all their hearts to make people aware and turn this around and create change. And I think as artists, that's one of our jobs also is to join their voices. Whether it be lawyers that are doing this or straight out activists or women's groups or men's that we bring attention to it. So, obviously, missing was a call uh, to do that through these extraordinary voices. Exactly what you're saying. Some of our leading singers and artists were able to embody this and bring their voice to it. And how profound was that to see them on stage and be at the top of their craft and be at the top of their power to say, this is enough. We need this to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to point out that there was a good percentage of this opera. I mean, we talk about bilingual operas. This was in English and Gitsan, and I you heard part of that duet. When the native girl and Ava were singing the duet, mirroring each other's words in Gitsan and English, it stopped the entire room. It was so beautiful. And was Gitsan always a part of the plan?
Not, I think the basically was around being able to access in all ways the language of the character, so that we could say, well, this is the land she was from. This was a language, her original language. And so that became very important. I think language is important to bring into the conversation and into the dialogue. But I think, as you can see from that duet, it really lifted it up into a higher place, because we're looking at a non-indigenous woman, and we're looking at an indigenous woman, and they can finally see each other, despite the fact they don't speak the same language, despite the fact that their skin might be different, despite the fact that their privilege might be different, that they can still see each other. And I think that's partly, what I was trying to get to as a writer, to be able to say, well, we have to be able to see each other, so that we can see change, that in each other, I guess. So
Um, can you tell us how the plot begins? I mean, I can do it if you want, but I
let me
just love the way it starts.
see you do it.
Well, I do it. I hope I don't get it wrong because I'm usually looking at marimba parts at that point. I'm thinking, don't go too quickly for the marimbas. Um, thank you, Brian Current. Um, Before I go on further, I would like to just wish the best to our dear Rosella Nichols. She's been sick this last year, and we're just sending her all of our best wishes. She's so lovely. She played the native mother. But what happens at the beginning of this opera is that there is a car crash, and we're on the Highway of Tears, which is in British Columbia. It's known as the Highway of Tears because so many of these murders and abductions happened there. Um, but there's a car crash where this white girl named Ava is in the ditch, and the authorities come and rescue her. And as she's being rescued, she sees a native girl in the ditch who is not rescued, and they sort of have dual stories happening, and they're with each other quite a bit throughout the opera, and it's painful from the start. I mean, just to see the native girl not being rescued, not being cared about. And I'm very curious. I think we talked about this once. Why does the white girl have a name and the native girl does not have a name?
I think it was in the demand of the story really was to, I mean, I could have absolutely written it so many different ways, but part of the challenge for me, and because it represents what we're dealing with in society, but also moving into opera, which is predominantly a non-Indigenous audience. I really wanted to have them follow a non-Indigenous main character, and somehow have them see that all of us, whether we're Indigenous or not, or white or not, what we want for our beautiful children is for them to be safe, for them to be loved, and for them to have a life that we dream for them. And so the only way I could figure out how to do that was to kind of start with a non-Indigenous character named Ava, who was on the right path to be a UBC lawyer, and had this kind of privilege that she had always worn, and to also kind of pair that with an Indigenous young girl who dreamed of all those things, and yet her life was stopped short. And so the only way she could have a full life, and come to have a full, yeah, like to experience her dreams, was to her spirit kind of ended up inside this young non-Indigenous girl. And we see that Ava change, because she's influenced by this Indigenous spirit in a good way. And we also see this Indigenous girl live a life that she never could have, because racism and because of a predator that killed her.
Yeah.
So we're looking at, what's our reflection as audiences, and how do we put a human face, um, on these beautiful young women that were taken way too soon. And I think the only way we can do that is understand that that, you love your child the same way that I love mine, you know?
Horrible. I mean, brilliant, and it was horrible. And I can't tell you, we had so many rehearsals. We did the premiere in 17, and then we did a tour last year. We had so many rehearsals where we basically had to have crying breaks because it's very difficult to rehearse that day in and day out when you are so closely connected with those people who have gone missing, and there could have been any one of you or your relatives that had gone missing without notice. And oh my God, you have to learn to take a step back in order to tell the story. But last fall we did a tour. We were in Victoria, we were in Regina, which Americans love, and then we went to Prince George, and Prince George is the end of the Highway of Tears, and oh God, it was startling being there. Have you been to Prince George?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember hearing a story that um, along that highway, truckers, if they saw, because there's no public transportation going down that highway, and if you don't have money, you don't have a car, some of these girls would be hitchhiking, but truckers would purposely veer to hit them because they knew they wouldn't be prosecuted. And it's just terrible because you go down the Highway of Tears and you see these signs with faces missing, literally saying missing. And I mean, I saw that in the road forward as well, with the face and with the number and all this stuff. And oh my gosh, I don't know. All I can say is people ask me what my favorite opera is, and I would say I have two favorite operas: Le Nozze di Figaro and Missing. Truly, I mean, it's on that level for me. So here's another question though. I know you've been a lyricist for a lot of songs. Most of them are rock. Um, I don't know why I say it like that, but maybe because I don't listen to rock that much. Um, what was it like hearing your words set operatically? And did you like have to prepare yourself? Did you listen to opera or anything before that, or were you just ready to be surprised?
Well, I had to do a bit of my own crash course, and I think I don't think I'm wrong to say there's not very many indigenous people that I know of that went to opera. It wasn't like, hey, are we going to opera
Yeah,
this weekend? Um,
I don't. I
so it
really
was,
should.
my God, like, but it is, this magical place where stories are, can be so massive and expansive humanly. And uh, so I was listening to everything I could and some resonated more than others. And I really was just, I mean, I'm forever kind of humbled by the idea that these opera singers, like I see their bodies and their beauty as people, and then all of a sudden this voice comes out, and it's kind of like it kind of melds physically and I think probably part of their spirit, but also their intelligence, and it just kind of moves out of their body in this magical way. Like it's forever crazy making for me when I watch them sing. And maybe I'm just such a newbie at it, but I just love it. I find it just such grace, like it's just witnessing grace. And so I think that's part of it, is that you can see the art live in the body, and then it's kind of lifted up and it reaches an audience. I don't know, it's too crazy for me. I love it so much. It's
Wow,
yeah.
I've never heard it described that way. I think I'm a little bit too close sometimes, but were you at all surprised by the operatic process, the rehearsal process?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked in theater, for a long time. So, there's some, major similarities to it, but also there's such a distinct difference in it. And I think that was really interesting to be a part of, and to really understand what those differences might be, and how opera singers, what their process is, and how they inhabit a character, how they inhabit the technical demands of the music and the job. So I think there's all things that are really fascinating as far as process and what is similar and what is extremely different than theater.
Hmm. Well, we had a really good group too, because a lot of people simply focus on sound, but I mean, these guys were really really invested in the whole piece. So as missing goes forward, and this is always, I don't know if there's a true answer to all of this, because we're having to deal with this in opera a lot about racial casting, and how do we cast Madame Butterfly? Porgy and Bess in its score is supposed to only be black people. Um, Missing is a half indigenous cast, and it's so strange. And I just admit this flat out. This is unfair. When it's other ethnicities, other groups, I'm a little more open. I'm like, yeah, maybe we could. Yeah, I don't know. I listen to a lot of people on that. Maybe we could go one way or another. When it comes to my own groups, though, I'm very, very protective, and therefore I have to sort of honor other groups by thinking they must feel similarly. So I guess the question is, does it always have to be indigenous singers? Because there are so few of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a lie that there are so few. I
You call
think
me a liar? No kidding.
Um, I think it's not a lie, but I think it's more challenging, absolutely. But I think what happens when you actually get two different, you actually have the people that are supposed to be singing. It's almost like like without even thinking, you've elevated the art form and the impact in 1 second. Anytime you have
Yeah,
a person on stage, you've elevated the impact.
that's so true. Yeah, one of my favorite books is called Indians in All the Wrong Places. And it's like, yeah, once we show up, I mean, that makes a statement. I think you said that to me. Uh, just by showing up, we're making a statement. And I think it's very important that we stand up for who we are and that we're visible for who we are as well, especially in 2020 when the world is becoming so divisive and xenophobic. So I live away from my tribes, but I really, with the great fortune that I have, want to represent them and show people in my world that yes, we're still here, we still exist, um, so they see us as part of
I mean,
humanity.
I've made, I don't know, I think of it differently when productions are done in university or, kind of arenas of learning. Uh, because I feel then it's an opportunity for someone that's not Indigenous or to embody a reality that they never have known.
That's interesting.
And I think once you have to speak the words of another reality, something shifts whether you like it or not. Like you have to really understand it. If you're a performer at all, that is any good, you have to kind of understand what that reality might be. And then if you're using those words, that those words get inside of you, and you have to, like you're using your emotions, you're using things that to portray an experience that you might not know, and I think that's valuable for younger people that are understanding the world. I think in a professional arena, I think it's great to be able to say, yes, it can be a bit more work to cast in a way that is culturally responsible to those characters, but I think that's okay. I think people should
Yeah.
be up for that in this day and age. We should be up for the challenge to get the right people for
Uh,
those roles.
Here's a slightly personal question. Don't be scared. Do you ever become so emotionally moved at performances of your own pieces that you cry?
Um, yes, I do. I mean, like all writers, I think we see writers crying when they're writing because we're such weirdos. But I think because sometimes you're so in it, like you're so not yourself. You're actually the character writing those words. So I think sometimes when I'm witnessing uh, performers work and I'm witnessing the extraordinary, uh, there's there's something that happens sometimes which I don't even know that I'm watching my own work.
Yeah, I bet it must take its own life.
yeah, I'm just kind of in the story, and then I'm on the journey with them, and I'm with them, you know.
Yeah.
And then I'm open to what they're experiencing, and I think that's kind of those transformations that we have as artists. Even though we know every word, we know we turn, we can still be in the moment so vividly that it's painful.
Well, one of the most extraordinary things about all the missing performances is that in every location where we performed, we would do a private performance for local bands and also victims' families. And oh my gosh, there were certain performances. Not sure if you were there because they were previews, where you would hear sobbing at the beginning of the opera that would continue for the duration of the opera. And there were a couple of those shows that we did where our cast actually had trouble finishing because you're representing them in a story in music, but when you hear their living reactions, their pain that has not heard, it's devastating. And again, I mean, kudos to you. You created that. It's incredible. If you never create another damn thing, that's incredible. It's amazing. So thank you for that. Um, Anywho, so at this point, we're going to do audience questions. So I would like to invite our producer Emily Aka on to the broadcast and see if she has any questions for us. My favorite color is purple.
Hello.
Hi,
Thanks for
Emily.
having me.
Oh,
Hi.
thank you for being here with us.
Pleasure is mine.
So, do you have
So
anything for us?
I do. I have some questions. One, there has been a lot of activity online about your lustrous hair.
Oh,
So tell us, is this just a COVID look? Uh, well, actually,
those are
Timothy,
for me.
well, Marie, your hair looks amazingly lustrous, but I think it's that Tim's hair is unleashed in this
Oh,
moment.
for me, this little
And
stuff.
there is a little curiosity about whether this is your usual look that you are just unfurling for us, or is this a COVID response? What? Tell us about your hair.
Well, there are so many things involved with this. I had longer hair when I was in my 20s. I don't think it's ever been this long. But here's one thing, because I'm about 82 right now, and it's like the last redeeming physical quality I have. So I figure I may as well grow it out, number one. But, along with what I said earlier in the broadcast, as I get older, I've become more aware how people don't see us as part of society. And we have, it's called romantic primitivization. And part of that comes from like Edward S. Curtis, who painted us in this big romantic mold. So they became so famous and so loved, and they're beautiful photos. A lot of them were posed. They were paid to be in other people's regalia. And fine, that doesn't kill me, but what it does is that people, even in 2020, want us to be that. So we're not really allowed to evolve in society. People see me as a classical musician and they're like, well, how did that happen? So I become the exception to the rule. I'm not just another, white people can do anything, but we're supposed to cry when people litter. There's so many stereotypes that we have to live by. But the main thing is, and this is a little bit of a stereotype as well, but my goal is to make people think about all of us as Indigenous people every time they see me. People who would not normally think of us, I want them to think about it all the time. So there it is. And I don't have to get a bad haircut anymore either.
Marie, thank you so much, Tim. Marie, I have a question for you from Penelope Thomas, a good friend of ours. Have you had any response from the community or the government in response to or in relation to the production of Missing?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and Tim can echo this. I mean, we were sold out for, I think, almost all of our shows, and we also, the production companies involved, both really were passionate about really bringing it to the communities first. So I think there was something remarkable about that too, and um, So it was really kind of it was really, I don't know, I guess, in production it's small, and then the community was added onto that and built into that. And then we brought it to an audience, and then we went to different cities. So I think there was this real organic way that it was built. And I believe that I hope people were affected by it for all of those reasons, that it wasn't just not just to say as artists we were speaking, but that it hopefully, I don't know, encircled the community and encircled people of all races. So, that's kind of a dream. I don't know if that's even possible, but I think we witnessed a lot of people uh, coming together and acknowledging um, this reality. And I think that's valuable um, in art. That's why we're here.
It's powerful, incredibly powerful. I mean, I personally, just as a side note, I think that's the exciting thing about art. It's been for a long time the thing that's attracted me to the live arts is the reality that you can go to something that is being performed in front of you and you can be a part of it, and then you look around the audience and you see other people who you've never met before, who are also part of this same experience. And sometimes I even end up talking to strangers as a result of this, because we've had the same experience and now we can go further on our little journey together, even just as two humans who have no experience in the past together. For this one moment we can connect. So I have a question for you, Marie. This comes actually from me. How did you come up with the production company of Urban Inc? Where did that seems like such an amazing project to come together, and I can't imagine being so bold. How did that come together?
Well, it's funny because it's the 20th anniversary of Urban Inc. This year. I'm no longer with the company, but it was in the sense I was really working towards my own work, and so what happens, right? You become an actor to do life-changing roles, and then you find that you're going to have to write the roles, and then you write the roles, and then you're going to direct it, and then you're going to try to find the money to produce it so that it can be done. So really, I think what's great about longer journeys in art is that you really understand that if you really want to tell a story, you're going to do everything you can, and kind of that's where I started, was really going, if I want to tell these stories, then I'm going to have to raise the money. If I'm going to raise the money, I'm going to have to start a production company. If I'm going to start a production company, I might as well direct it, because you put so much work into it. So I think it's an evolution, to be sure. Yeah.
That's fantastic and so inspiring personally, because sometimes it can seem, from a burgeoning creative perspective, it can feel overwhelming and daunting and like an amazing thing to achieve. But what you're really saying is that you just followed your hunger. You had a need and you had a desire and you had something to say, and so you built a place to say it. And that seems actually really achievable in some ways, if you just stick to your courage, which that's easier said than done, clearly. I have one more question for you from Mary in my inbox, and she just wants to know if you always envisioned yourself making films.
Wow. I think I did as a kid. I mean, I think that was probably the first dream, because a lot of people too, I never really went to theater. I didn't know theater really. My parents didn't go to theater. So what we did, like a lot of people in anywhere in the world, is we had this TV. So of course, I dreamed that dream because I could see it. I couldn't necessarily see, people like me in it, but I could see it enough to dream it. So yeah, I think I did early on. That was the thing, was to to be able to tell those stories. And of course, like a lot of people that evolve in art, you can fall in love with theater and you can fall in love with live performance in a minute because it's also about ideas and it's about humanities coming together, hopefully that have something to say. And I think, you can kind of fall in love with that movement too, of going, um, yeah, I'm going to tell the story and this is how it's going to be done. But I think with TV now and, doing the kind of stories they're telling, it's a really unique time in the world for storytellers because there's venues to tell stories that you, I don't know, that you're passionate about, that are real and have something to say. So the time is now.
That's amazing. And in fact, actually, I'm going to sneak one more question under the wire here that is related to what you're just talking about, because Marion is asking, would you write another opera libretto? And if you did, what sort of story would you want to tell in that medium?
Oh, I don't know. Hi, Marianne. I don't know totally. I mean, I think what I experienced with opera was the idea that it has a large canvas and that it can encompass large emotions and large tragedies and the largeness of humanity. And I've always loved that kind of canvas. So I think I'm not entirely sure what that story would be, but I do appreciate the craft of it and kind of the immense technique. And I don't know, I don't know. You can just get caught in the idea of what perfection looks like, in that form and how can you marry it to um, things that need to be said or sung in a way that can bring people in. And a friend of mine, a musician, often said that when we're singing, like we want to be able to bring people into our hearts, and music is a way to do that. It's because sometimes we can be prejudiced or we can be small-minded, but when we hear music, suddenly and most often, our hearts open so that our minds can hear something bigger. And I'd like to invest in that for sure.
That's beautiful. That's all the time we have right now for audience questions.
Great. Well,
But
thank you for being with us, Emily.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Marie, I have an idea for you though, because I mean, if you write another film, the Creek word for Native people, it's Stajati. So, as a Star Trek fan, I would like you to do a film called Stajatis in Space. I think you would be Stajatis in Space.
Sorry,
right? Yeah, I'll be like the Mr. Sulu character or something like that. Very quickly, we're getting to the end of this, but I want to do a few just rapid questions for you. No thought is allowed for this. So you just first answer that comes to mind. What's your star sign?
Capricorn.
Favorite food?
Salmon.
Oh, really? Favorite junk food?
Oh, chocolate.
Oh my gosh, that's so proper. Flight or invisibility?
Flight.
In 40 years, what do you think people will be nostalgic for?
Oh, sitting at the table.
Yeah, there is that. Can you imagine blowing out a birthday cake? Burial or cremation?
Definitely cremation.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
What's your favorite planet?
Saturn.
Oh my gosh. Star Trek or Star Wars?
Neither.
Okay, this is over. Bye. Fiction or nonfiction?
Nonfiction, that's fiction.
My last question is, will you marry me so I can move to Canada?
Let's talk on the wedding plans.
Yeah, we'll talk. I think we've discussed this before, over drinks possibly. So Possibly, yes. So, you have some projects coming up, I know. And can you tell us just very quickly about Red Snow? We saw a clip from it.
I think it might be the clip might be coming. I'm not sure, but it's around a Gwich'in Canadian soldier that ends up in Afghanistan. He's taken hostage,
Hmm.
and it came out in festivals last year, and we got kind of swayed by COVID there, obviously, in our theatrical release. But we broadcast on CBC tomorrow night and on
Ooh,
Saturday. Yeah.
wow. So I
Mhm.
want Rome. Can you bring us that clip of Red Snow before we say goodbye here?
Just taken in Panjwai
Movement, roof!
in an ambush,
Contact!
now being held captive by the Taliban.
You are a spy.
I should have killed you when I had the chance.
You're an American.
Canadian,
You all the same.
protecting my country.
You are on my land. Protecting your country. Who's the crazy one now?
Not like them.
No. But I am caught in the same web. Tamamun zeshur kawi amana.
You're not a soldier now. You got a trophy.
And you?
I'm a dead man.
Konichit bachichu kunlekwa wachrakuri.
Hutye chana hutye. Hutye chana hutye.
Hakuma jaba dadi khabari kawi. Sana poicham. Bumi America iri.
First Nations Canadian.
Ikarlak torak morokivek kihivek aulaunearak tutin.
C'est quoi tu Unatra.
That looks incredible. And just the mixing of cultures is going to be a stunning thing to see. So I can't wait till we can all see that. So, Marie, thank you so much for being with us tonight from Galiano Island. Sounds so exotic, really, and I'm sure it is. And I can't wait to see you in person again. So please stay safe and stay happy. And I hope we can see each other again soon.
Okay, thank you so much. And thanks everyone for watching and putting this together. And Tim, let's get married soon. Text me.
Yes, no
whatever.
babies allowed.
No,
Nothing.
no babies allowed.
None of that. No talking, no nothing. Okay, we'll do it. Consider it done.
All right, hon.
Okay, good night.
Take care.
You too.
Okay.
So if you all would like to learn any more about Marie, you can check out her website, which is mcm2.ca for Canada. If you'd like to learn more about me, my website is timothylongmusic.com. And before we go, I would like to thank our producer, Emily Aka, our production manager, Rob Signum, our technical director, Rome Brown, and the founder of Foundry Arts, Pat Diamond, who's one of my favorite people. And just be aware, this will be out in podcast form next week. Our next show will be on November 19th, live streamed with the mezzo-soprano Marion Newman. And that will also be on podcast form afterwards. I would like to thank all the wonderful people in my life that have helped me and who remain helping me. And I'd like to thank my sweet mother, Stella, who is 87, living with my sister in Maryland. So I want to remind you all, vote. Thank you for being here. Mado Yakoke, live long and prosper. And we're going to play out the song Indian Man with lyrics by Marie Clements and music by Wayne LaValle. See you all soon.
You got your ancestors